Hey YouTube, Brandon Ascari here with another great episode of Ascari Digital's Content Creator Academy. Now, if you haven't already noticed, got a new haircut, shorter hair, longer beard. This is actually going to be a tutorial on how to grow a sexy beard in 2020 while staying at home. But if you actually believe that, then this is Ascari Digital's Content Beard Growing Academy, where we give you tips and tricks to help educate and inspire you to growing the best and most successful beard possible. If you believed any of that, then stay tuned, but otherwise we're actually going to be talking about tips and tricks for Adobe Premiere Pro, how to get the most out of the editing software, and what's a little secret sauce that you could put on to make your videos stand out from the competition. But first, let's go to the intro. And we're back. So, first let's talk about some of those tips and tricks. But if you haven't already, don't forget, subscribe to the channel, give us a big thumbs up if you haven't already, leave a comment down below, and please, if you don't mind, share the video to all your friends and family. And if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so that way you could be the very first person to watching our videos when they air. So let's jump over to my computer screen where you could take a look and see exactly what I'm talking about. So one of the first clips I want to take a look at is a recreation of a shot that I did in a short film for a friend of mine. So let's go ahead and import this clip into our timeline. Now, what I did for this film was take a static shot because we really weren't working with much of a budget. We didn't have the budget to get a dolly and a crane and all these cool things, but we wanted to get this really cool rotating shot that would be something that really just intensified the emotion that the character was going through. So, for instance, I recreated it with me and my really bad acting, but, it is what it is. So let's find what we're actually going to use as part of our clip, which is maybe from here. Oh my God, you don't know how to cry, blah, 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 blah. Look at that, you already broke character. You're going to do it again, aren't you? Yep, there you go. All right, that's better. Let's get rid of that. Now let's get maybe, 5-6 seconds, something like that. Oh no, you're starting to fall off the bed because you eat too much. Good. Okay, so that should be enough there. Now, what I did to create a really cool looking shot with this was I went into my effects controls and then I scaled this in to, let's see, maybe 200%. And then what you're going to do is start working with your scale and your rotation with keyframes. Now your keyframes are going to be these little toggle switches over here, and these are going to allow you to set animation points or points where you can change the numbers that you see here. So let's go ahead and at the beginning of this clip, let's hit the keyframe. So we have a keyframe for where the scale is, and then we have a keyframe for where the rotation is. And then let's go ahead and set an end point at the end of this clip, somewhere around here. Now what happens is normally you want to go to the very end, but I can't see where it ends at that point. So let's actually do a frame over, and then when we're done, we'll just click and move them over. So now let's take the scale back to 100%. And let's actually change the rotation on the first one. You know what? Let's do it back here. And let's set the rotation to, I don't know, what would be upside down. Let's start it there. There we go. Okay. Let's see. So that's the effect. But right there it looks good. So the idea is we can't let that rotation go for as long as it did. Let's try to scale it. You got to play with these effects. Now that's way too fast and it still doesn't work. So maybe our scale has to actually be 160 when it's out. You got to play with these settings until you find what actually works perfectly for the shot. So it might be something more like this. See how we're getting closer? Now, let's try taking it just to 175, 180. Let's get crazy. So it only goes out 20% from the 200. Means we should probably be able to get away with it. And maybe the zoom goes from there to there. Let's see. Almost. Just a little bit in those corners. So we're actually going to change our rotation. Now, what would have helped this is if I used a wider lens. So then I could have cropped in even more. So what I'm going to do instead is start off at 225. So we're cropped in even tighter. And we'll end at, I don't know, 190 for instance. So that way we have a lot more to work with. We start here and then maybe we'll go to, I don't know, let's see. Let's still try about there. Let's see how that works and then put this over here. Now let's see how that effect goes. Pretty cool. It's one way to help connect your audience with the emotion. Now, what we could do instead of doing that much, because this clip would have to be a little longer in my opinion, for that to really work, it's moving a little too fast for me. So we would play with that a little bit. We would set our starting point maybe on the side, and then our ending point would be back to normal, which is here-ish, and then that would allow us, let's see how that looks. That should be a little slower on the rotation. That's starting to look a lot more cinematic now. Now that really drives home the emotion. Let's look at that one more time. Hold on, let me try playing this back. If you ever have an issue with your playback, drop from full to like 1/8. It's going to totally destroy the image quality, but it should help playback. Oh yeah, now that looks like we had some fancy crane move or some, you know, crazy jib, dolly, something like that, and that just took a tripod shot, cheap tripod, no movement, and turned it into this really heavily emotive movement in the camera. That just made this shot go from looking like a $50 shot to like a $2,000 shot. So these are things that you could do when you're in post to really help with your, you know, making your footage come out more cinematic, more professional. So what we're going to do now is talk about the next little trick, which is basically the same thing, just on a much smaller scale idea. So let's just take this back like it never happened and turn this to 100%, so we're back to normal. And what we're going to do is we are going to set the scale to just do a slow dolly in post. So we're going to set the scale at the beginning of our clip. We'll keyframe that at 100%. And then we're going to drag it out 3/4 of the way through. And we're just going to take it a little bit, 120%, something like that. Maybe even 110, we'll see. So it doesn't zoom in that much. You want to keep these things subtle. You notice when we did the last demo on where we did the rotating zoom out, it was a little too much, so we had to keep toning it down and slowing it down because we didn't want it to be too obvious. We wanted the movement to be nice, smooth, and concise. So let's see how this looks with 120% scale starting at the beginning and going to the end. You see, as the talent's face starts to fill up more of the frame and you slowly start moving in, it's emphasizing the emotion. Now, I am a horrible actor by all means of anything, but even with terrible acting. If you have, you just drop a bottle of water in your eye and all of a sudden you're crying, you use a tear stick, or maybe you think about something that you don't want to think about and you actually get there. Whatever you do, that little movement in helps so much in getting a much more cinematic and emotive experience for your audience. You want to do whatever you can, whether it's in production or in post-production, to take your audience on that emotional journey with your character. And those are two ways that you could do it, just by using keyframes in scale and rotation. Very important stuff. Always remember that. Now we just recreated a dolly in shot, and before that we did a rotating dolly out shot, which is, one of those trick shots that you could never get unless you had a crazy amount of equipment, but we did that pretty much for free in editing. Now, rule of thumb, shoot in a higher resolution than you are exporting. For instance, I am shooting in 4K, and that is basically 4 times the size of 1080p, which is Blu-ray. So if I release in 1080p, that means that I have 4 times the amount of data in here in the size of the frame, and then I condense it down to that, so I have the ability to zoom in farther on my shots without losing any resolution if I export at a lower quality. Now for YouTube, I export in 4K. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, much as subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell, and giving me a thumbs up. Don't forget, please help. We need it. So let's go into our next trick on Adobe Premiere Pro. Again, this is going to be utilizing the scale, but what we're going to do is take basically a talking headshot, which is what I usually do on this show, and we're going to turn it into a 2-camera setup, even though we only had 1 camera. Now again, what I'm about to show you is better if you record in higher resolution than you're going to export. So I shot this in 4K, and I would export it usually in 1080p to lose the least amount of resolution possible, but let's go in and take a look. So I'm going to go to, here is the video of me doing the martial arts episode. Media pending, go figure. So let's go ahead and grab that. We're going to drag that in. Now you see that we have the sound here. You hardly hear anything coming out of the scratch audio in the camera. This is our audio file over here. Just for the sake of the next example, I am going to highlight both, right click, and hit synchronize. Okay. Now Adobe is going to automatically sync the sound for me, so I don't have to do it like I would in the olden days. Makes my life so much easier. Okay, now my footage is synced up with the sound, so I can go through and check just to make sure. Let's see what we're working with here.
Hey YouTube, Brandon Ascari here, coming at you again with another...
That looks like it's sunk properly. So what I'm going to do is trim just a section out for the sake of this example. Then I'm going to toggle the lock on my video layer so I could get rid of the scratch audio, which I no longer want because my sound is properly synced, I don't know, succinct, blah blah blah. Now, because this is just a short example, I am not going to go through and do the entire video because that'll take too long. So we'll get rid of this excess and assume for this example that this is exactly the part that I want to use. Now what you're going to do is highlight the video layer, and you can use Command C or right click and copy. Then you're going to go right outside, and then you'll Command V or right click and paste. Actually no, you may have to Command V. Anyway, take this layer, drag it on top directly of the other video layer that you have highlighted again. Now I can use this to toggle if that layer is being shown or not, and it really doesn't make a difference because it's the same thing underneath. But what we're going to do is now assume that video layer 1, which is this one, is our A cam. It'll be our medium shot. Video layer 2 will be our B cam, which will be a close-up. So what we're going to do is click on 2. We're going to go to Effects Controls, and then we are going to scale it. Let's try 150%. Okay, we're getting a little better. What we're going to have to do now is change the position a little bit. So we'll take the right side, the 1080, we'll drop that down a little bit, And we can move me over a little bit just to fit that Scari Digital CCA in there, you know, product placement, branding, whatever. And then we can go ahead and toggle this. So now we see we have two different clips. So what you'll want to do is just go through, watch it, choose when you want to cut to what. But for instance, let's just make a couple of quick cuts. So I'll cut there, then I'll go back to the selection, I'll delete this. Come on. I'll delete that. Then I'll let it go on the close-up for a while, and then I'll make another cut, and we'll scale back on that a little bit. And now we got it cutting back and forth. So let's take a look at how that looks.
Another great episode of Scari Digital's Content Creator Academy, where it is my goal to help educate and inspire you to being the best and most successful freelancer that you can be. This week's episode is going to be on just how the heck did I pull that scene off, and what gear did I use to do that. So before we get started, if you haven't already, don't forget...
Alright, let's fast forward because that was much longer than I thought it was going to be. Let's go right there, watch it cut back.
Educate and inspire was good.
Yes, it was. So you see now how automatically we have these perfectly fluid cuts between an A cam and a B cam with only shooting with one camera. Now I recommend, like I said, using a 4K camera and exporting at 1080p so that way you could zoom in as far as I did, if not even further, and have the best possible resolution, losing no image quality whatsoever. But if you don't have access to it, you're shooting 1080p, just keep your scale a little lower, so if you crop too far, you'll lose too much resolution. You could go in maybe from 100 to 125 or something like that, and you won't really notice much of a difference, if any at all. When you push it past like the 150 mark, you may start to see some decline in image quality, especially if it's a lower resolution camera and not as good quality, but for the most part, you should be fine, especially for stuff like this. It's not as necessarily important as if you were doing it in like this crazy Hollywood movie. So those are some tips and tricks on how you can use some scale tools, and if you're doing an interview or a documentary or something and you're talking head, we want multiple cameras. You can go through and do that with this. If you want to get some dramatic emphasis on your narrative scene or something like that, you can utilize the keyframes to go in and out. For your dolly in, you can rotate the image to help emphasize some of the emotion. Now, my last trick for this video is going to be on how to clean up your audio a little bit. What you're going to do is go into the Effects tab down here, and you're going to type in denoise, and you'll see the denoise icon down here. All you have to do, click and hold, drag over on top of your sound, and then all of a sudden your sound is going to go from okay or not so great to, ooh, that's pretty good.
Hey YouTube, Brandon Ascari here, coming at you with another great episode of Scari Digital's Content Creator Academy.
Now let's go back, that's with it on, and let's see if you can really hear a difference with it off. Edit, undo, boop, and...
Hey YouTube, Brandon Ascari here, coming at you with another great episode of Scari Digital's Content Creator Academy.
Before you did hear a lot of noise. I'm not 100% sure how well you can hear that in the editor because I think the sound is being used in my microphone. So just know that it does actually make a difference. I usually use it for a lot of the videos that I post on YouTube. I do feel like it helps a lot. That denoiser does take out some of that background noise. So if you have like the air conditioner on, or there's somebody's mowing the lawn outside, or the refrigerator's running even if you're far away in the house, certain things like that, it will help reduce, not completely eliminate, but will help reduce. And especially if you're working for a client and you're doing like a panel or a discussion or an interview or something like that where it's a long form conversation, things like the denoiser really help taking out that little bit of extra noise and help emphasize the voice, so that way you can deliver a more professional product to your client. All these little tips and tricks are just things that you can do in Premiere. They are by no means comprehensive whatsoever. There's a million different things you could do in here to get a lot of effects. This is just my first video on tips and tricks in Adobe Premiere Pro. And now let's go back to Brandon, where you could see my face, as beautiful and horrific as it is all at the same time. Take care. And there you have it, folks. Another great episode with tips and tricks on Adobe Premiere Pro. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. But don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you could be the first person to see our next episode when it airs. Don't forget, Monday and Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Otherwise, give us a big thumbs up if you haven't already. And in the meantime, my name is Brandon Ascari of Ascari Digital's Content Creator Academy, and I will see ya.